Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Stefania Jimenez. We hear about fentanyl all the time, how it comes into our country, what laws leaders are passing to fight the drug, but we can't forget the human cost of fentanyl. In 2021, the Centers for Disease Control found that the synthetic opioid was involved in about 22 deaths for every 100,000 people in the U.S. It's linked to the most deadly overdoses. The Drug Enforcement Administration says that it's in most illegal drugs. And often it's the people who don't know they're taking fentanyl who die from it. Sometimes they're kids who think they're getting a prescription pill from their friends, or they're experimenting, which, by the way, kids do. The National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics says that 50% of teens have misused a drug at least once. But with fentanyl, that could be one time too many. And that one mistake leaves victims' families with the painful reality that they'll never see their loved ones again.
Happy birthday to you. Okay, blow your candles.
Thank you.
Blow them out.
Blow them out.
Kyle was a very, very kind young man. He was always looking out for me. He was like my best friend. He loved animals, and he was always helping with my pets and taking care of them for me, and loved dogs. We were living in California. He became an EMT there, and then we moved here. The day that it happened, he was going with me to the vet. I saw him about 3:40 in the afternoon, and he was in his bedroom hanging out. So the next morning when I got up, he was still in bed, and I was getting ready to go somewhere, and I realized it was almost 11 o'clock and he still wasn't up, which was not normal for him. And then I went in there and I called his name and he didn't move, so I went over and I touched him and he was cold. And I screamed to my husband that he was dead. He wasn't this horrible person that people want to make somebody out to be, because for whatever reason, he was self-medicating with drugs. It is the worst pain that any person can go through, and I don't want anybody to go through it.
There's no way we can talk about fentanyl in the U.S. without bringing you here. This is the Juarez-Lincoln Bridge, which connects Laredo, Texas to Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. It's one of the many U.S. ports of entry, which basically makes it ground zero for fentanyl trafficking.
Fentanyl is what we're seeing across the entire southern border.
Established.
If you look at it like a football game, of course, the first line of defense would be, the ports of entry. That's your defensive line, if you will. Then you have the Border Patrol, which are going to be your linebackers. They have that opportunity at the checkpoints to catch, anything that either initiates in the U.S. or unfortunately gets past the ports of entry. I think the Border Patrol serves like the last chance of defense. Technology helps us, with some inspections, but again, the cartels or the transnational criminal organizations are keeping up to date with the stuff that we try to use to interdict those.
A lot of times, we identify what we try to identify beforehand. If we know it's fentanyl, then we'll move in there. So this will give us a real-time reading of any substance that we have in the field. Given officer safety, we can use a laser, right, to shoot through the substance as opposed to actually getting hands-on, opening the package.
These transnational criminal organizations, they're out to make money, and they're going to try everything possible to get these drugs, in particular fentanyl, into the hands of our young, kids, adults in the U.S. Just the fact that Laredo lies geographically right in the middle of the Pan American Highway, it has access to all the major highways in Mexico. You got the I-35 corridor. That once you get to San Antonio, you can go east or west via I-10. So obviously they have access to all the major cities in the U.S.
The Centers for Disease Control says from January 2021 to January of 2022, more than 107,000 people in the U.S. died of drug overdoses and drug poisonings. 67% of those deaths involve synthetic opioids like fentanyl. Up next, you're going to meet a woman who survived 3 fentanyl overdoses, and she hopes that you learned something from her story.